fam, this is Connected, episode number 43. Today's show is brought to you by Igloo, an intranet you'll actually like, OmniFocus, which is now on the Apple Watch, and Field Notes. I'm not writing it down to remember it later, I'm writing it down to remember it now. My name is Mike Hurley, and I'm coming to you live from San Francisco, California during WWDC, and I have sitting right in front of my very eyes Mr. Stephen Hackett.
Hey, Mike.
How you doing?
I'm good. We're very close.
Yep.
Been here all week doing shows and talking to people and hanging out, so it's a lot of fun. It's amazing what you can do in a hotel room to turn it into a studio.
Not a lot, actually. And I am always, as always, so honored to be joined by the lovely Mr. Federico Fettici from Italy. Hi, Federico.
Hey, Mike. How does it feel to be able to look deep into the eyes of a man from Tennessee?
I try not to stare. He's very scary. Federico, I'm so happy to talk to you, but I'm so sad you're not here with us.
Yeah, I'm sad too. I've been scrolling pictures in my Twitter stream, people getting together in San Francisco, and then, of course, last night I watched the crazy John Gruber, Phil Schiller interview. I was very jealous.
That was kind of insane. That was a little bit insane.
Insane. But yes, I miss you guys very, very deeply and emotionally, physically even.
Oh my word! Wow.
But yes, I'm happy to be here to talk about stuff, Apple stuff. I'm really excited, really happy, really excited and happy.
So we're really happy to have you, actually, because this is one of the really weird things. When you're here, if you're not attending the conference, it's really hard to keep up with what's happening. Like, I pretty much just know everything that happened in the keynote because I saw it, and I spoke about it with Jason, and you pick up the occasional tidbit here and there from people. But, like, I haven't been reading anything or anything like that because we've been all over town on our wild parties. But so I'm very happy to have, the well-read Federico Fettici here to educate us a little bit about some of the little things that we may have missed from WWDC this week.
Yeah, it's a weird thing because there's so much stuff going on. I watched about half of the State of the Union last night and then basically fell asleep watching it. So
that's the best way to fall asleep.
This should be good. Yes, I fell asleep as they were writing Swift code for Watch.
Yeah, that's that's the best strategy. Just take a look at some UI kit, some Swift, and then fall asleep.
And then you're done. So we're going to forego follow up this week because there's so much news. We have a lot of follow up. So next week will be, I think, supersized follow up section. But we thought we would jump right in, and they started. The keynote started with the Mac, and we'll get into this with iOS as well, but definitely sort of a slower cycle for OS X. So we've got 10.11 El Capitan. And I said that Mike could see me. I was gesturing wildly as I said it. So it's a smaller release, right? It's refinements. They screwed with window management again because that's all they do in OS X releases is change the way mission control works. But not a whole lot going on this time.
Yeah, well, it seems like they're focusing on the experience, and improvements. And it's funny, how they try to frame the experience of... it's not like they're introducing any major new apps to change the experience. It's like they want to make the experience of using OS X better. So you see there's a couple of improvements in Mail. You can have tabs. You can have gestures. There's a bunch of new stuff in Safari. And what was interesting to me, so I installed El Capitan, which is, by the way, I think it's an awesome name. It's kind of funny. It's kind of tongue-in-cheek, maybe. I don't know. It just sounds funny to me, probably.
I don't like it. The reason I don't like it is because it's awkward to
words.
say, right? And obviously I will need to be saying it out loud a lot. And El Capitan is just, it's a mouthful. I mean, I assume we'll probably end up, my understanding is the mountain is referred to as El Cap. And I can get a lot more on board with saying that every time than El Capitan. El Capitan.
Yeah.
Although it is fun to say.
It is. You have to do your little
hand gestures,
dancing fingers.
Yeah.
When you say it, it's a fine name. It makes sense. It's part of Yosemite Park, and the mountain lion, snow leopard, etc.
The logic of it checks out.
Yeah, and it's they can I'd written this thing, and we never actually got to it on the show before WWDC, but about like, does Apple need like a snow leopard moment, and kind of what that means? And I think they've done that on OS 10 this time, and that's not to say I'm not excited about it. I think there's some really good stuff in there. I don't think we're going to talk about it very much, but you should definitely check out Rocket, which just published this morning. A lot of good conversation there about Metal and what it means, not only for game developers, but for people like Adobe, like who can use Metal to speed up their applications. So a lot of stuff under the hood with OS 10 that I think is exciting, but definitely not the biggest part of this keynote, even by any stretch of the imagination.
Yeah. Well, if anything, Metal, it's confirmation of the fact that the advancements that Apple is doing in terms of GPU and, having a graphics engine is growing faster, and, it's becoming more powerful quickly. And if you compare that to innovation in the CPU, where Apple depends on another company, it's clear, at least to me, so I'm kind of ignorant, but I think it's easy to see that, Apple can do this kind of stuff, and they have deeper control that, instead of using something like OpenGL, they can do this kind of framework with Metal, which can advance more quickly, and it can go beyond games. Right. So they're kind of making up for the lack of advancements, maybe in terms of processing power in the CPU using Metal, which I think it's really smart. And maybe, Mike, you said on Upgrade, you would have liked to see another demo during the keynote for this Metal stuff instead of a game, and I think I agree. It would have been nice to have a demo from Adobe, from this kind of productivity intensive applications on the Mac, taking advantage of Metal. That would have been really nice, I think.
I wanted to see someone like Adobe or Pixelmator come out and like show some insane, zooming and stuff like that. Like, some people didn't like how upset me and Jason were about the game thing, but it's like the video game stuff, it doesn't like translate to me as it doing anything interesting. And I think to a lot of developers it's the same. I think to the majority of the developers, the core people that are there in that audience even, would get a bigger kick out of seeing an app like Photoshop doing some really interesting stuff on stage.
Yeah, I mean, it's, we can talk a lot about demos, and I think we should keep moving, but, it's just, I think it's really hard to get a demo that, hits a lot of your major points and like resonates with the crowd, and that's a hard thing to pull off. But yeah, I think Metal's a big deal. I think it'd be one of those things that sort of is the highlight of this release. Looking back on it, like as cool as it is to shake the cursor and the cursor get bigger, that's probably not what tell our kids about.
Well, that's a big selling feature, I think. You'll be able to shake the mouse and see the cursor. That's kind of funny. Also true. Many people do that. I do, at least when I use a Mac twice a week, I do that kind of stuff. So it'll be useful to me twice a week. By that metric, I think it's a major new feature.
I like what you did there. I noticed it.
Should we jump into iOS?
Already?
Yeah,
wow.
I mean,
okay.
Do you have anything else on the OS 10 side like that?
I just want to mention Safari.
Okay, yeah, do it. Yeah.
Just because I'm really happy about, you can pin tabs now.
Why does that make you happy? Because I don't really understand that so much, I don't think.
You don't understand pin tabs?
Well, no, I get what it does, but like,
yeah,
I don't know why.
Safari always lacked this feature, and because of when I'm on my Mac, I always. I mean, every day I always want to keep at least 2 tabs open. My website's analytics page and my website's homepage. So these 2 pages, these 2 tabs are always open in Safari. And when I'm on the Mac, on the iPad, I can do the gesture real quickly, to get the bird's eye view of the tabs, and I can keep those 2 open all the time. On the Mac, I feel like the tabs are so large, I really want to be able to use the screen to have a bunch of tabs to the left and to have them always open, And I love this feature in Chrome, and I'm really happy that it's now in Safari. I'm also happy the way that they designed, like the way that you, as a website owner, like how you can customize the icon that shows up for users. You can provide an SVG file, and it can be, You have a bit of control over how it shows up in pin tabs, and I would be really happy to have this feature on at least on the iPad. Doesn't look like it's happening on the iPad. Maybe eventually we'll see. I don't know. Just a minor thing that makes me happy.
Yeah, it's one of those niceties that Chrome has had for a long time, and it's good to see Apple continuing to be competitive in this space, because for a lot of people, Chrome is a lot better. And the reason it's not my primary browser is the battery life impact that Chrome has. So it's nice to see some of those things that make Chrome a little bit nicer, make their way over to the Mac. Like they were doing the thing where if there's audio playing in the tab gets a little icon on it. So if you open to have a bunch of things and suddenly something starts playing music or advertisement or something comes up, you can quickly find it and hush it. So that's good. It's a nice little feature that once you have it, you're kind of sad that it's not there.
All right, I'm going to take a quick break, and then I think we should jump into iOS, because I feel like this is a nice point to thank a friend. What do you think?
All right. Yeah.
This is a sponsor that makes me very happy. This week's episode of Connected is brought to you by Field Notes. I think many people know that I am a pen aficionado. I buy lots of different pens. I try out different styles. Like, I am a big pen guy. But I only buy one type of notebook, and that's Field Notes. And the reason I do that is because these are books that have a real story to them that I love. They're made by a great company, Field Notes brand, who are based in Chicago. They believe in, looking at all American stuff. And for me, what I like about that is they look at local businesses, they help out smaller businesses, and they try and find the best products that they can find to get their notebooks, their pocket-sized notebooks, and make them the best that they could possibly be. I am a color subscriber to Field Notes, and what this means is I get every new edition of Field Notes sent to me directly. They do 4 a year. They do seasonal editions. Every edition has a completely different look about it, a different style. Their current one is so fantastic. It's called the Workshop Companion Edition. It features a set of 6 books and a custom sleeve of a set of stickers. Each of these books is themed to a common project that can be done around the house, like electrical work, plumbing, painting, gardening, automotive, and woodworking. They have great iconography that represents those different things, and they have great colors as well that match it as well. And if you are a color subscriber, like I am, and like you should be, you also get yourself a magnet as well, a little workshop reminder magnet for that. Field Notes are great for the uses that they're making with the Workshop Companion Edition, right, for stuff around the home. But you can use them for anything, and I do. I have one right in front of me right now. I always do when I'm recording. It's how I take little notes to myself during the show. But I also keep them in my pocket when I'm out and about town. Like I'm at a conference right now. I always have a Field Notes with me. But I use it for like shopping lists, for little ideas that I have. Sometimes it's just way easier to just grab a pen and paper and just scribble a note down to yourself. Field Notes are a great size. You can keep in your pocket, in your bag, in the car, by your Mac, anywhere and everywhere. You can find out more about Field Notes and the Workshop Edition itself at fieldnotesbrand.com/workshop. And if you buy yourself a year-long color subscription, starting with the Workshop Companion Edition, and use the code RELAY, you'll get yourself 3 Carpenter pencils and a 3-pack of pitch black memo books, which are their all-black Field Notes edition as well. And even though you should buy a subscription, you can also buy packs of the Workshop Companion individually. But you want to hurry with these. Go and look at them now. If you like them, buy them quick, because they sell out. And once they sell out of their editions, they don't make them again. So go get it right now. When they're gone, they're gone. Field Notes. I'm not writing it down to remember it later. I'm writing it down to remember it now. So, iOS 9. iOS 9, huh?
Yeah.
Excited
crazy.
over there, Federico?
Well, I think I was surprised. My initial reaction was a surprise, because there were a lot of rumors, but I kept thinking that maybe Apple, especially coming after OS 10 in the keynote, I was like, maybe Apple is really doing a Snow Leopard release on iOS too, because they want to improve the experience, they want to improve performance, so maybe we won't see much new stuff. And instead, we did get not the same amount of changes of iOS 7 and iOS 8, but we did get quite a bit of new stuff, and especially on the iPad, and especially on the iPhone for some apps, there's going to be major changes, I think, to the way that iOS works. And I don't know, what do you guys want to start from a specific point? I just want to talk about Siri, if it's okay.
Yeah, that's why I want to park iPad for a moment, because that's like a whole separate discussion, right?
Yes.
Because a lot of the stuff that's in all the other stuff that's in iOS is going to be on both, but iPad is gaining some additional functions that I can't even imagine how you feel about them, so we're going to put that to the side for a minute. But talk to me a little bit about Siri and the proactive stuff, because this is something that obviously a lot of people have been talking about on the heels of Google I/O, right? Because Google are showing their chops of what they know and what they can do to make a proactive assistant. Microsoft are trying to do a lot of the same with Cortana. I don't think they can do it as effectively because their ecosystems are built slightly differently. But when they showed off Cortana originally, I remember us talking about it on the show, and we were impressed by some of the stuff it can do. So it seems like Siri now is extending itself into many different parts of the operating system. It has new ways that you can interact with it, and it has new ways of interacting with you. So, Federico, what have been some of the overview and the highlight things that you've seen which interest you about this kind of new digital assistant kind of like for Siri?
Well, the main change is that now Siri can learn from your habits and from your daily routine. It can learn your patterns. So when you wake up, what app you use during the day, what do you do, which apps are the most used ones, and do you use a specific app at a specific time of the day, maybe in a specific location. So for instance, Apple actually demoed all these features quite nicely with a bit of a story. You wake up in the morning and you want to, usually you check out your meditation app. So when you wake up, in the lower left corner of the lock screen, which is now dedicated to handoff and to suggested apps when you're at a specific location, such as the Apple Store or Starbucks, now in the morning, because iOS knows which is the app that you want to open first thing when you're out of bed, it can offer you a shortcut to open that app. And of course, it goes deeper. Maybe you're at the gym and you want to listen to music, and iOS knows that you listen to music because it can see the location, it can see the time of the day, it remembers your habits. So as soon as you plug in your headphones, and presumably only if it's a specific time of the day and only if you're actually at the gym, it'll automatically start playing music, and maybe, I suppose, a specific playlist or maybe a specific artist, depending on your taste. So really what Apple wants to do is they want to use you as your own recommendation engine, basically. They observe you, the apps that you use, the time, the location. I suppose that they can look at the people you communicate with. There's a whole bunch of metrics they want to rely on to make you save time and to kind of make iOS come to you. In the sense that you don't need to open apps, you don't need to find music, you don't need to go hunt the contact list and find the specific person, because there's a new search page, and you can just open the search page and you will get a new contacts grid with contacts depending on the time of the day. So when they say they want to be proactive, they mean that they can look at all this data, and this is where it gets a bit strange. Most of the time, this kind of processing is done locally on the device, and your iPhone and your iPad can learn your habits, and they can form a sort of personal database of your life and your routine and the things that you do, the apps that you use, and they can update this database of knowledge over time and provide you with proactive recommendations and actions. And Apple is also saying, we want to keep as little data about you as possible on our servers, but sometimes we do need to do some processing, in the cloud. And when we do, we want to anonymize your data, so it's not linked to your Apple ID, it's not linked to other third-party Apple services. So, for instance, if we know something about your context and about the people you communicate with, we want compare that data with Apple Maps. So there won't be any cross-pollination, basically, of services when we do this kind of intelligence. And they're also saying, of course, we won't sell this, we won't give this data to any third parties. And the reference to Google was pretty clear. But the question so I've been trying iOS 9 on all my devices, and I've been reading the documentation, and it's not exactly clear how Apple will form these habits, how it will look at you and the way that you use your device. Because if there's a bit of a history here. If you go back to iOS 7, when Apple introduced background app refresh, they were saying we know when you use an app during the day and how many times you check the same app. And using the background refresh, we can optimize your network usage and your battery consumption by refreshing an app in the background only when it needs to, because we know when you're gonna use it. And the concept here is kind of similar. Only, it's been extended to a bunch of more data points. So it's people, it's location, it's actions. But the concept is similar. It works in the background, it works on your device, it knows what you want to do, and then it provides you with recommendations on the lock screen with automatic actions. So you plug in your headphones and it starts music, and there's a new search page where it's got all this, new interface for people, for apps, for news, which is kind of weird because it's based on Bing, I think. So yeah, what's interesting is my concern is also, is this gonna be useful? Basically,
you've nailed exactly what I've been thinking of, right? Which is Google is good at this because this is what they do.
Right, they've got entire. Not only they're good at it, but I just can't imagine that this would be as smart or as intelligent as something that can run in a giant server farm. Privacy stuff aside, which we can get into if we want.
No.
Like I just don't like, have they built something powerful enough that runs on device to do all of this? And I think to Federico, I think your analogy to iOS 7 was great. I actually hadn't even thought about that. Apple's been doing some of this, but I hope that it can be good, because the thing is, if a service like this isn't really good, it's just annoying.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like if you're, like if you log into Netflix and it keeps showing you like that one TV show, you're like, I just don't want to see it. Like that grates on you. Think how much more it'll be like, no, I don't want to open that app every morning. Stop. Why is this, keep popping up? So I hope they've really worked to get it right.
It's interesting to me because it seems that they are fascinated by this intelligence and machine learning and all this stuff that Google is doing. They seem to be interested in this space, but they don't want to be as creepy in their minds, and according to many other people, they don't want to be creepy as we take all your data and we work our magic in a black box and we give you the intelligence as a result. They are fascinated by this idea, but they don't want to do too much. And so it can be weird or maybe weird for now, because we don't know if it's going to work or not. But here's an example. If you go to into the settings of iOS 9, you can decide whether Siri or the intelligent assistant, if he should be able to look into your email and to match phone numbers with email messages. So when a phone number calls you and it's not in your contact list, the assistant can look into the email and associate a person or a likely match with that phone number. So Apple is they want to do this stuff, they want to do this. Let's look into a bunch of places and let's elaborate on all this data, and let's give the users the information they wouldn't be able to remember or to do otherwise, because it would take a lot of time. But they're also doing this, locally with settings, and they tell you, we don't want your data, but sometimes it goes into iCloud, but we make sure that it stays secure and we don't give it to other people. So it's a strange mix for now, because we don't know if it's going to be useful on a daily basis. And for me, that's the main point. Is this going to be useful? Will these new search page or, lock screen shortcuts and actions, will they make me go, oh, wow, I really wasn't expecting this to be here. Mm-hmm. This is really useful. This is what I want to, I want my reaction to be wow. And right now, of course, it's, 3 days. I can't say that I've been wowed by iOS 9 and proactivity, but we'll see. It's interesting because I can feel that they want to do this stuff, but I don't know if they can.
You see, going back to that email thing, I think that is a prime example of the difference, right? So you're giving Apple access to look into your email to match telephone numbers of people that you don't have in your caller ID or in your contacts. That's not enough. Like, I want my intelligent assistant to know when I have a flight, to know when I have a package delivered, which is the stuff that Google does with Gmail and Google Now.
Mm-hmm.
Just saying, like, oh, scan my email for phone numbers, like, that is not, I mean, that's a useful feature, but I want more than that.
And it may do more at some point, or it may do more now, we just don't know it at this point. But it is one of those things, too, of, like, so I could say that I opt in on that on my phone and my iPad, I guess. I don't know about you guys, but, well, actually I do know about you, Federico, but, my iPad might sit for a couple of days at a point, and sometimes my mail hasn't refreshed, or, there's all these things going on. So there's the opportunity, because it's client-based, because it's local, for it to be outdated. Sort of the nice thing about, like, the Gmail and the Google Now stuff, like, as soon as you get an email from Delta saying, this is your flight information, like, it's your assistant, your intelligence platform doesn't have to wait for me to check my email, right?
It knows before you do.
Right.
Even.
And so, I think this is all the same point of, like, this is really great. I hope this is successful. I want it to be successful. I want to use this. I often look at Google Now. I'm like, I wish I had some of that stuff available to me as, like, a first-party, interwoven service in my device. You can use Google Now on the phone, but it's in an app, and it's got some issues. And so, yeah, I think we're all saying the same thing, that we want this to be successful. We're looking forward to using it, but maybe it's fair to say that Apple has to sell us on its usefulness and its relevance throughout the day.
Third parties can't do anything for this, can they? There's nothing for a third party to do to give Apple any information or anything like that.
So, if maybe for an example, like your to-do list, like Siri can't crawl your to-do list and pull tasking, like that sort of third-party information.
Yeah.
Do you know, Federico? I don't think it does.
I don't think there's a. As far as intelligence and productivity is concerned, there's nothing I think developers can do. There's no Siri API, nothing like that yet. So it's all iOS. It's all the iPhone and the iPad and whatever.
So all you jokers running around with third-party mail clients.
Yeah,
do you have to have your account set up in Mail and fetching so this can stay up to date?
Yep.
That's a little weird.
It's a start. But the thing is that the issue with them starting now is Google are so far ahead.
Right. No, absolutely. They are behind in this. I don't think there's anyone on the planet who would disagree with you on that. I mean,
but I also want to make the I feel like it's appropriate to make the counter argument to that. For millions of people, they don't use Google now. And
of course.
Maybe they
don't.
There's people, like, I don't want to say, normal people has become
No, I get you. Like, they don't care that they're behind.
Like,
they don't
my
know what it's
mom,
like.
for example.
She doesn't
my
care.
mom.
Yeah, I get
She
that.
doesn't care about Gmail and Google Now and Google Inbox. She has an iPhone, and maybe one day she will update to iOS 9. And if someday she comes to me and says, hey, my iPhone kind of shows me Facebook in the morning, or I didn't know what this number was, but I saw that it was like a local business calling me. How did that happen? And I feel like Apple is late for us to this sort of intelligence game, but there's also many other people that don't rely on Google's intelligence.
Yeah.
And so I think the market is still open for those people. So maybe it's I mean, for the tech press, for the tech people like us, it's too late, but it's never too late, really. Well, in some cases it is too late, but maybe not in this one.
So I got some great news. I got both Apple Pay in the UK in July and then transit maps as well in Apple Maps. That transit map stuff looks fantastic, and that's what I'm really looking for, especially to link in with my Apple Watch. But the Apple Pay stuff, I'm very excited about that. I can't wait to start using Apple Pay.
Yeah. What's the first thing you're gonna buy with Apple Pay?
A present for you.
Yeah. I was thinking maybe you should buy an Android phone with Apple Pay.
No, see, this is the thing, right? So in the UK, it's probably going to be limited to £20 transactions because that's how the contactless system works.
I saw that. So
yes,
that's the limitation of like the system itself,
Yeah.
not okay.
But I do know that there is stuff happening to increase the limits,
Right.
but it's because of the way we already have all that functionality in place.
Right.
But to be honest, for anything over like £20, I would maybe want to go through a bit more of a full-on process than just tapping my phone. I don't know, but maybe I'm used to that.
You should start a Bank Rumors website.
Bankrumours.com.
Also,
like
to
that.
be fair, you can buy an Android for £20, I think.
Federico.
You probably could. I mean, and it probably
See?
wouldn't be too good.
Yeah, the Apple Pay segment was great. It was one of the two sections of the keynote led by women, which is, we can all agree that Apple is catching up there as well. There's a great interview by our friend and Rocket co-host Christina Warren on Mashable, an interview with Tim Cook, and she, to her full credit, pushed him really hard on that fact. And I think Apple is starting to come not come around, but start to address this issue. And the it was great. Like this is like the vice president in charge of Apple Pay, and I think it's really good stuff. They're bringing like loyalty cards and reward cards to it. So if my favorite coffee shop has a rewards program, they can do that all through Apple Pay as well. So it's good to see Apple advancing. I forget Apple Pay is only 9 months old because it was introduced with when the watch was announced in September, and I feel like they're making really like steady good progress on it, which is great. I think I've talked about on the show before. I only have one card that can use it. My primary bank doesn't support it yet, but every time they refresh that list of like these are the banks that support it, I always go and like try to find my bank, and then I send them another email. Bank Rumors.
That's so sad.
It is sad.
Federico, tell me about Apple News. Are they calling it Apple
No,
News?
we've actually, totally skipped search. I think this is a major initiative, and Apple kind of downplayed this aspect at the keynote.
Go for it.
So, I mean, Spotlight is getting a redesign, of course, and that's not the big news. Apple is doing a lot of new things to make you not use Google search, and I feel like the APIs they've launched and the kind of what they're telling developers will be a major play in the next few years. So in search, in iOS 9, which by the way, Apple is using a lot the term just search, not Spotlight. The developer framework is called Core Spotlight, but the end user feature, they always refer to that as search, not Spotlight. So it's interesting. So Apple is doing a bunch of new things. They're doing deep linking, which refers to the ability to open a specific section inside an app. So they're combining this deep linking support with a backlinking feature. So if you open a link from Messages in iOS 9, Safari slides in from the right. There's a new launching animation, and you get a back button in the upper left corner, kind of like a xcallback URL in Google Chrome before, and you tap that button and you go back to Messages. And it's all done automatically by iOS. It already works with third-party apps, even if they're not, updated for iOS 9, and it's amazingly useful. So deep linking, there's a backlinking feature. But the real deal is that Apple is now able to index content from local apps, from websites, and to put all this together and let you search for stuff and open that result directly into the app, effectively skipping Google altogether. And this will work for local apps, so OmniFocus will be able to advertise your tasks to search. So you will be able to search, for Relay, and you get a list of tasks and projects for Relay in OmniFocus, assuming that, of course, OmniFocus updates for search. And you will be able to search for, maybe Instapaper adds support for search, and you can search for articles from the search box in iOS 9.
And this is now swipe again, isn't it? It's not swipe down. You swipe over and you're given this new search panel.
You can swipe over, but you can still swipe down. It's kind of weird because you got two search boxes. One is the old position, you swipe down. The other is a new search page, kind of like iOS 6. And the intelligent stuff is only in the search page. I think they will have to make a decision by the final release.
I'm hoping that you're about to make me feel really good here. If you're on the home screen and you tap the home button once, what happens?
Let's see.
Please tell me it goes to the search page.
That's how it used to work.
Yeah, and I miss
Right now
that.
it doesn't.
Ah!
Right now it doesn't.
I miss that function so much.
Yeah, I really feel like they need to finish things up here. There's two different ways to activate search, and it's kind of weird.
That's fine. It's fine. It's another one.
Anyway, besides the ability to, so an app OmniFocus can say, hey, I got this content. You can index this content, and developers get the ability to update this content in the background for search. So let's say that OmniFocus refreshes in the background, the data changes, and it can tell to the core Spotlight framework, you can say, hey, my content has changed. So index me because you will find new stuff and you need to remove a bunch of old entries. So local apps can show stuff to search. And that's awesome because we all wanted to be able to search for data, items, articles, links, photos, whatever, anything. We always wanted to be able to search for content from apps. And this is happening with iOS 9. Even bigger news. Apple is saying that they will index web content. And here's where it gets a bit, kind of potentially awesome, tricky for now, because we don't know yet. So my assumption is that they are using Applebot, which is the web crawler that they have created to index web pages. And they're saying, we will index your web page if you add a bunch of tags to your website. And we will see your content. We will index your data, and it will be available to iOS 9 through web search. When the user taps on these web-powered results, they have the option to not go to your website, but to go to your local app inside a specific section. So they are linking web results based on web indexing to local apps. And the magic glue that's holding all this together, it's called universal links. And
there's so much stuff here, man. I'm getting
Yes.
so lost by all these new terms.
Yes, and universal links is the technology that will allow web pages, websites, web links, HTTP links to go directly to apps. So in iOS 9, assuming that all developers add support for this kind of stuff, let me describe you a typical scenario. Okay. You're browsing Twitter, and Federico, which is me, I'm just talking to me in third person, shares a link to a Spotify song. I tap the link, and I don't go to a web view. I don't go to the Spotify website in Safari. I go to the Spotify app directly inside the album or the song that I shared. Let's also say that Mac Stories makes an iOS app eventually. iOS search can index my web content from the website. The user can open the search box, search for iOS 9, and if everything works correctly, iOS 9 will return a list of my articles about iOS 9. The user taps that result and it opens in a Mac Stories app or to the Mac Stories website, and none of this data ever touched Google. So I feel like this is a major play by Apple in search, and it's using a bunch of different technologies. It's kind of interesting that a large portion of this stuff is based on handoff from last year. So resuming user activity across apps, across devices, and there's new technologies like web indexing, universal links, deep linking, the ability to easily go back to the previous app. there's going to be major, I feel, at least just looking at the documentation, talking to a bunch of people, this is going to be a major change in iOS. And I feel like a lot of developers, a lot of companies and websites will rush to make their content indexable by Apple, by Applebot, whatever, by iOS 9 search. And if I were Google, I wouldn't say I would be worried, but I would be starting to feel concerned, to say the least. Because Spotlight has been able to do, web stuff for a while, but it was always limited. Now Apple is saying we want you to be able to go from the web to the app easily, and you don't need to go to google.com and type. Mm-hmm. We want you to search here, and then you always end up either directly on the website or into the app, and you never need to open a search engine. It's kind of big stuff,
Yeah, and it feels like there's an ever-growing tension between Apple and Google. Tim Cook spoke a couple weeks ago. You can find a transcript. We'll put it in the show notes.
Oh, and I didn't tell you the best part. Sorry, guys, I totally forgot. I even wrote about this. If you're looking, so let's say again, use my Mac Stories example. You use iOS 9 search to look for articles from me on your iOS device, and iOS 9 finds articles from macstories.net. Using universal links and a bunch of other pieces of code that Apple is doing with iOS 9, search knows that MacStories actually has an iOS app on the App Store, but maybe you don't have the app installed on your device. So from the search results, and Mike, you should be familiar with this stuff because we talked about this for Android. From the iOS 9 search results, you tap the link to my article, and iOS maybe prompts up a dialog and says, hey, you're going to this website, but these websites, they actually have an app. Do you want to download the app right now and continue your search into the app? So Apple is kind of also using app discovery in this new feature. They want you to be able to look for stuff, whether it's local like OmniFocus or whether it's from the web through Applebot and web indexing, and they want you to always end up into a native app, whether it's already installed or whether there's a stop in the middle. You need to download the app and then you can continue. Google is doing the same thing, basically like the same technology.
App indexing, they call it, right?
App indexing on Android, and Apple is doing the same thing now. And so it seems to me like Apple is making they're kind of saying we want you to never go to Google again.
Right, and that's what I was getting to. There's this rift between Google and Apple that seems like it's growing. Not only do you have Tim Cook sort of going off the handle in a way that I found a little uncomfortable about the privacy stuff, but they keep doing the keynote and doing these other sessions. That is a common topic of, we're doing this because we're doing it in this way because we don't want your data or to protect customer privacy and customer information. And it does seem like that is sort of a consuming thought with Apple right now of not necessarily beating Google, but trying to be really different from them in like an ideological way. And again, like all this other stuff with the intelligence and everything else, that's great if it works. And but the search stuff does seem pretty great. And I think that the ability to move between applications based on the content you want makes a lot of sense. I just hope that I hope that it's done in a way that's not confusing, which I think is why, like, if you look at screenshots, those backlinks say different things in different contexts to help leave breadcrumbs for a user to go back to where they were. Say what you will about I click on a link in Tweetbot closes and the App Store opens. Showing that transition helps a user understand what's going on. So I hope that that's not an issue for them. But I am excited about the ability to find content within applications and to kind of move between them in a more fluid and dynamic way.
Last 2 points quickly before we move on.
Mm-hmm.
Apple is saying to basically, there's a spam concern spammers try to use this technology in search to show up in places they're not supposed to? So Apple is saying you should avoid over-indexing your app content or using unrelated keywords because iOS measures the level of user engagement, and so we will basically pull your results from search if you do this kind of stuff. Interesting. We'll see how accurate this will be in practice. Yeah. And second, you can now use Siri kind of like Google Now. You can, when you're doing something in an app, you can bring up Siri and say, hey, remember to do this. And this portion of the command refers to what you're looking at. So this is kind of similar on a smaller scale to Now on Tap, which is Google's way of bringing Google Now as a layer on top of any app on your Android device. Now you will be able to say, I want to do this to Siri, and Siri should be able to understand what you want to be reminded of. So it seems to me that it's only limited to Siri reminders, but it will work with third-party apps if they add support for the search metadata. So we'll see. I don't know. It's interesting.
Yeah, absolutely.
Let's move on to News quickly.
Yes.
So News is a new app from Apple. It seems to be kind of the next stage of something like Newsstand combined with Facebook's instant articles plus an RSS reader plus Flipboard, right? It's those kinds of things all mashed into one. Publishers can submit their stories to News, and there's different layout options and stuff that you can get, and it kind of seems like Apple are kind of hinting towards the fact that anybody can do this, and you'll get different tools, whatever they will be, to lay out your articles in a certain way. It doesn't seem like there's necessarily going to be with pump stuff in, like you have to go in and make it look pretty, because that's what Apple will want. So Federico, are you looking at this with Mac Stories? Do you want to be in News?
Yes, because for me, it can only be a benefit. I talked about this before. My business model is not based on page views. It's based on whether people read my stuff or not. And so it's based on whether people like what I do or not. And to be able to let more people know about me and to let more people read my stuff and our stuff from the team easily, it's essential to us. And so this is why we have an open RSS feed. You can read us in your RSS reader. I don't care. I just want you to read as comfortably as possible. And I want to show up in Apple News. I'm interested in you can keep your advertising revenue if you choose to use ads on Apple News. It's kind of like, I don't know if there will be a system to say, hey, I want to have nice print-like articles here every day. What kind of tool can I use? Can I automate this process so every article that I make always shows up with a nice layout? Or will this be only for specific articles? So I need to use an app like iBooks Author to make special layouts just for specific stories. I don't understand how the RSS stuff works for now, but I signed up anyway because, hey, whatever, I just want to show up in Apple News. It's interesting how Apple is saying, we're doing machine learning also here in Apple News. And we know about a million topics. And in theory, people will search for iPad productivity, and if the Apple machine learning is accurate, I should show up. We'll see. Again, Apple is doing new stuff with intelligence, and we don't know. They're not a proven solution yet. We'll see. But definitely, I want to be in Apple News. I want to be everywhere. That's my dream.
Yeah, I just while you were talking, went to the News Publisher page, and it says, to get started, open this page in a Mac or PC browser. Tap here to email the link to yourself. So you can't sign up for this on your iPad, which is hysterical. But yeah, I think it's interesting. We spoke about it a little bit on Clockwise today. I think my problem with it is that Apple has to make sure that good content is there, or people just won't use it. It'll be another thing that Apple tried and didn't work out, and it goes away in 3 years. So I think everybody we've talked to this week has been excited about putting their content into it. And I look forward to playing with it myself when I get home and seeing, what I could do in there with 512 pixels. But I think they've got to prove that it's useful.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, so I want to talk about the iPad, right? That's something that I think everybody who's tuning in for has been waiting for the last hour for us to start talking about. But
Well,
before,
that and Apple Music.
yeah, I don't know, man. I think people want to hear your thoughts on the iPad a little bit more. I mean,
Okay.
whilst we're here, I'm not kidding. People are coming up to us and just saying, "What does Federico think about the iPad?" It's like I don't know yet. I haven't spoken to him, so I'm excited. I'm wondering if you're gonna like it or not. We'll find out. But first, let me do a quick thing and thank our friends over at the Omni Group for sponsoring this week's episode. And I want to tell you about OmniFocus. I love OmniFocus. It is my task management system of choice. Nothing works better for me. Nothing gives me what I want more than OmniFocus. My life is completely planned out in this app. Like this week, it has been so helpful, reminding me to do prep for this and to go and grab that and to make sure that this is working and that's working, send that email. Without OmniFocus on any week, and especially a week like this when I'm away, I would just be completely lost. Nothing would ever get done. It is one of my most important tools of being able to get my work done and has become more and more important for me since being able to go full-time at Relay. I use and love OmniFocus 2 for the Mac. They've recently updated their iOS app to be universal, so the iPad and the iPhone live together now, so they grow together and you can have them both once and you get them everywhere. I love it on the 6 Plus. It has like the little split view stuff as well. And they also have OmniFocus for the Apple Watch. It comes for free with the universal version of OmniFocus. It's just waiting for you right there to go install on your lovely shiny Apple Watch. You can use the power of Siri and OmniFocus to add watch items to your inbox so you can feel like a super productive secret agent when you're on the move. You can also get a quick view of what's next on your list for the day with the Apple Watch Glance, which I have, so I can see, that's my next task that I need to do today, just so I can keep on top of everything. If you want to see what OmniFocus on the Apple Watch would look like, on the Omni Group website at omnigroup.com/omnifocus, you can go and actually see how it works because they have built a demo of the Watch app on their website that you can go and play with for yourself. The Omni Group back up everything with their OmniFocus with an amazing support team. They're super confident you're going to love OmniFocus so much that they even offer a 30-day return policy on it. So go check out OmniFocus for yourself today at omnigroup.com/omnifocus. Thank you so much to the Omni Group for supporting this show and all of Relay FM. So Federico, that little thing called iPad, what's going on there?
Did you read my article today?
I haven't read anything.
Okay.
I need you to
So
help
I'm gonna discuss my basically what I said in the article, and I kind of saved some thoughts for the show. So there's new multitasking, and during the keynote, actually, Apple also talked about a bunch of new features for iPad productivity. A new keyboard, a new way to move the text selection and the cursor on the screen, and there's going to be a new way to watch videos with picture-in-picture. My short take is that there's still gonna be people who don't need an iPad or don't get why other people like the iPad, and that's okay because we talked about this before. Everybody has his own favorite tool, and it, this is a judgment-free zone, so we're not talking about the way other people do their work every day. But for people who use an iPad every day, I feel like, and I thought about this deeply, as you can imagine, for the past 2 days, I installed iOS 9 on my iPad. Yes, I installed iOS 9 on my primary iPad because I need to understand this as soon as possible. And I just can't shake the feeling that this is going to be the biggest change to the iPad in 5 years, even. This is what people like me wanted, to be able to do more with simplicity and without, the complexity of a computer. And I know that this will sound crazy to people who use a computer because there's nothing complex about OS 10 or Windows. But it's different, So I truly believe that Apple took their at least 2 years to build this feature. There's many pieces that needed to fall into place for this to happen. And Dr. Drang kind of made fun of me today for saying that Apple couldn't have done multitasking before because the technology wasn't ready. And he said that he had one of those old computers was able to multitask. I feel like it's different, because the things that apps can do today are much more intensive and powerful than what programs and applications could do 30 years ago or whatever. So I feel like that comparison doesn't hold up. But yes, I this is like I'm struggling to find the words because I don't want to sound like like I'm exaggerating things, but it's a profound change. If you work on the iPad, these like when I upgraded from iOS 8 to iOS 9, and you start using the split view, the slide over, the picture in picture, it's like upgrading to a new device for free. And I don't know if I can describe this well enough, but it's like, I imagine when people who work on computers get a new computer, this is what it feels like. It's just that the iPad was so behind, and you could feel that Apple was behind. They could do more. It's like, I want you to do more. Why you're not doing more? Why you're not giving me tools to work better on the iPad? And now it's coming all at once, and it's like I'm drunk on features.
So this is like when me and you have been arguing about this stuff over the last few weeks, like with the earnings reports and stuff like that. I think this is the kind of thing that I know I was getting towards, and I think that we were meeting in the middle on this, which was the Apple needed to establish the iPad as a separate thing, not an extension of the iPhone, because that's all it's been, right? It's just been the iPhone but bigger. Like they always had the same features, right? They just went along hand in hand. This got this got this. There are like some really, really good stuff in here. The text selection, the picture in picture, like this is exactly what the iPad needs to be. I have a question for you though, Federico.
Yes.
At the moment, with all this split screen stuff, are any third-party apps working?
No, because they need to update.
Right, it's not so. A lot of the work is done, right? If they did the size classes, but they still need to do some more stuff.
You can already, if you're into a third-party app, you can do the slide over with one of the Apple apps because they are already, updated. And because when you do slide over, you just peek at another, app. You don't need to do the split screen. It's not two active apps at the same time. So slide over already works for Apple apps if you're into a third-party app. But all the other stuff, developers will need to update. And the majority of the work is already done, because if this is the one of the points that I make in my article, if developers have been paying attention and kind of been catching Apple's hints over the past couple of years, they need to make adaptive user interfaces, and they need to, whether it's auto layout or one of those other tools or technologies, to make sure that your interface can be flexible. If you do that, it'll be a matter of minutes to make sure that you can have what Apple calls compact and regular sizes for your app. So if you do that, it'll be trivial to make sure your app is ready for iOS 9 and for split view and slide over. What's not so easy is to make sure that your app scales intelligently, across different sizes. So maybe you want to move, interface elements around. You want to kind of change the layout a little bit, not just, just shrinking the interface. You need to pay attention to the way that your app will change layout across orientations. And, the split screen, the split view has two possible sizes. Then there's slide over, and developers will have to be careful, what functionality do I want to give my users when my app is a narrow column on the right side of the screen. So there's many details that developers will need to pay attention to, but the majority of the work is already done, and this is very clever from Apple to they spent the past couple of years saying, hey, you can have a resizable simulator in Xcode that you guess it what it's going to be useful for, and last year you can make adaptive user interfaces. There's going to be landscape support on the iPhone 6 Plus with a bunch of different features, so pay attention to that. And now it kind of feels like it's all coming together with this ability to show multiple apps at the same time. What I'm still maybe concerned about is is this gonna kind of go against the principles that guided the making of the iPad? So the iPad, when it came out 5 years ago, we, as the tech people again, we made a big deal of, and maybe became even a meme. We have a bunch of memes, like Apple can do web services and Google is getting better at design. And sometimes they're true, sometimes they're not, but they're memes and they spread quickly. And one of those memes was the iPad is the app that you use at that time. So the iPad is a book if you use iBooks. The iPad is a newspaper. It's a toy. It's the web in your hands. We even made a show about this. So the iPad was an object, because it was one app at a time. What you see is really what you get. And the skeuomorphic interface kind of helped in this regard because it established a connection between the digital interface and the fact that you were holding an object. And that was kind of one of the essential characteristics of the iPad. Now, we've moved past the skeuomorphic interfaces, where we have apps that are more neutral, or maybe they are visual in a different way, They use color, they use icons, they don't use textures, they don't look like objects. And now Apple is saying, we want you to use the iPad not like an appliance, not like a utility, but like a computer. But it's different. It's like a computer, but it doesn't have all that baggage from the computer era. So I predict that in the next few months, you're going to hear a lot of people saying Apple wanted to do the post-PC kind of, new age stuff. And now they have gone back to making the iPad like a PC. But that's not really the point. And because this is exactly what iOS should be doing. Let me use a bunch of apps at the same time and make sure their interfaces can be resizable, they can be fluid, they can be scalable, they can adapt to my orientation, to my device, and it can run on a bunch of different screen sizes. People who are going to say this is not iOS-like, they haven't been paying attention to where iOS is going. And this is not new. This is stuff from the past 2 years at least. That said, is this going to be, against the nature of the iPad? I guess in a way you do lose the elegance of having a single app on screen at the same time. But that's why it's important to note that this is not the default option. When you boot up a Mac and you open an app on your Mac, it opens as a window because, on a desktop computer, you have Windows. When you open an app on the iPad, it's still going to open in full screen mode. And you're still going to be able to see by default one app at a time. And in fact, I predict that most people will never discover or use the split screen stuff on the iPad. This is made for people who want to do more. And the fact that it's not enabled by default, that they're not saying, hey, now you always need to use two apps at the same time. That's important to remember that iOS is still primarily one app at a time kind of OS. And whether it's going to be difficult to use or not, that's a bit more tricky to discuss because, when you put more stuff on screen, it becomes more difficult. And that's just, it just happens. It's just the way it is. If you have to deal with a bunch of apps at the same time, you're going to have to deal with a bunch of more complexities at the same time. But at one point does, the dogma of saying we're not doing two apps at the same time. At what point does an idea, an idea that you need to respect because that's the way that the iPad is. At one point does that go against your users? And the people who want to work from an iPad, you're not doing them a good service by respecting the ideology of the iPad. You're going against them. And so by enabling users, power users, because this is stuff meant for power users, there's no denying about this. By enabling people to say, hey, I know that it's gonna be maybe a little more difficult to deal with because it's two apps at the same time. And I know that it's gonna be maybe a little more ugly because you get all these panels flying around and it's not as beautiful as having a single app at the same time. Just let me do this because I need to have my notepad when I'm browsing the web, and I need to have my Twitter client when I'm, watching a movie because I'm dumb and I want to make bad jokes on Twitter. And so I'm happy. I'm not, I mean, I'm happy about the feature, but what I'm most happy about is that Apple is not stuck in the past when it comes to the iPad. They're not saying, hey, because Steve Jobs wanted the iPad to be the object that you hold, we're never gonna do two apps at the same time. That's what makes me happy, is that they're listening, and they're doing things that maybe 5 years ago would have been unimaginable, because we were all repeating the meme. We were saying the iPad is the object that you hold, and now they're not doing that. They're offering an option, and having options, I feel like it's important when it comes to letting people work easily. You gotta give them options. And if the option, in this case multitasking, if the option is based on a good technology, a good foundation, a developer ecosystem that can adopt this feature quickly, then I think you have a home run.
Yeah, absolutely. For someone who does most of their work on the Mac, and the iPad has been sort of just a side device really since day one, looking at what they're adding here is both exciting from the point of view that they're breaking feature parity between the iPhone and iPad, saying, hey, the iPad can do more, it's more powerful, it's got a bigger screen, let's do more with that. That's exciting. But they've really addressed what I would consider my most common complaints, things like text entry being easier now with the trackpad as a keyboard.
Mm-hmm.
Being able to, exactly like you said, I'm surfing the web and I need to take notes, and I have an iPad Air 2, so I can do true split screen apps and not just the little slide over guy. That sort of stuff, yes, it complicates the iPad, but I feel like the choices they've made of what to add covers so much ground. The things that they added were very carefully chosen, and I think very wisely chosen. And so I think it's not features for feature's sake, but it's, hey, what types of things can we do to make this more powerful and more flexible for people while still being an iPad? And I think and I haven't used it, but it feels like watching their presentations and looking at their website that they've struck a balance there, and I think that's good.
I have a few doubts right now about the implementation and the future of all this. When it comes to the actually how it works, the biggest missing point is the lack of a drag and drop. At least right now, it doesn't seem to me like you can pick a bunch of items from an app and just slide them over into a second app. And I feel like, again, I don't know if this will be possible. I don't think it will be, at least in this first version. But it seems to me like it's an obvious next step for the feature, especially considering, the feel of touching stuff on iOS. You touch your photos, you pinch your photos and zoom, and you manipulate content. And being able to drag and drop things between apps seems like an obvious next addition to this technology. The other question is, it seems to me like this will make even more sense on a bigger iPad. But I don't want to talk about, the rumored iPad Pro, which Apple is apparently about to release later this year. The split view feature will likely be enabled on future iPads, of course. But right now, split view is only on the iPad Air 2. And my impression is that a lot of people still own older iPads, whether it's the iPad 2, which doesn't want to die, or iPad minis, or the first iPad Air. Those iPads are only gonna get slide over. And so I wonder, will this be a problem? Will whether it's for developers, because they can say, hey, we don't really want to put a lot of thought into doing split views because people don't care, so we'll just ship a basic split view and that's it. Or maybe the majority of users won't know about split view, and maybe I'm overthinking this because eventually people will upgrade to a future iPad and everything will be good, and people on the iPad Air 2 right now can be like beta testers for the future.
I mean there's always tension when you add a software feature that has a hardware requirement, and I think the tension feels greater right now because Apple has left so many old iPads for sale, that you can still, it'd be one thing, like, there's a lot of iPad 2s running around or a lot of iPad 3s, but you can still go buy those devices or their equivalents in the mini family. Like, it's not just that there's a lot of them out there still, it's that Apple's still selling them. You can go down to the store and buy one. And that, I think, is why this feels so bad. Because it's like, on one hand, Apple's trying to push the platform forward, and the other hand, at Apple is sort of not holding it back, but they're not helping their adoption rate by selling lower cost older devices. And so my guess is that this year we're going to see that line tighten up a little bit and not be so broad as far as technology. Because, iOS 9 will support everything iOS 8 does, and they're not dropping anything there, but they do have these other features that are reserved for the Air 2. And I mean, clearly, like you said, it's a transition, right? At some point, everyone will have a new iPad, and this will be great. But for now, it feels like if I were a developer looking at what I could add, I think the true split screen for the iPad Air 2 would not be the top of my list this summer.
Well, yeah, that's my concern. Maybe eventually developers will I guess that Apple is saying to developers, like, in the documentation, every app should support slide over and split view. And I bet that developers will, they will add support for slide over and split view. It's just that I'm afraid they won't put a lot of care or thought into this. They'll just say, yeah, whatever, just resize and move those two icons to the bottom and call it a day. I want developers to pay close attention to how this stuff works. But right now it's hard to tell because we don't have any example of third-party apps. So we'll see. Kind of like a closing thought that I had, if you allow me, Stephen. I don't know where Mike is, if he's just listening, and maybe if he's thinking about the Android phone.
He just
still
got in the bed with my iPad Air 2 a minute ago. It's snuggling with it.
So let me have the closing thought.
Okay.
I don't think Apple could have done this before. I truly believe that they have spent 2 years building up to this with the frameworks, the API. Even if you look at stuff like dynamic text, to be able to change text quickly, have the interface adapt to the text size, that's going to be essential for slide over and split views. So when your app changes size, you need to change the fonts. You need to still maintain readable content. That's another piece of technology that was introduced, dynamic type with iOS 7. And I really believe that this wouldn't be possible hadn't Apple redesigned iOS from the ground up. Just imagine, and I know there's a lot of people who still believe that the iOS 6 design, the skeuomorphic design, was superior to what we have today. And I agree that sometimes it's better to have a drop shadow or to have borders around buttons to, it's okay to make interfaces not all white and, thin typefaces. And Apple is kind of dialing back on that with El Cap and iOS 9. But I believe that with a skeuomorphic design, this wouldn't work. And it would actually be kind of ugly to look at. Just imagine having like leather on one side of the screen and like brush metal on the other. With realistic textures and interfaces, it would be kind of weird. It wouldn't feel like multitasking. It would feel like rearranging your desk, with all these objects on the screen. So I feel like the the interface of iOS 7 and kind of 2 years ago, we said a lot, Apple is laying a new foundation and Apple is building a new structure. And those kind of felt like buzzwords, because they look great in press releases, they look great on websites. When you say, well, laying the groundwork, well, building a foundation, this is a new design structure, especially when Johnny Ive says that with a British accent, it sounds really great. But it's also true, because they've really been laying the groundwork. And when you look at these apps with this new design language and the way that they blend together on the screen with multitasking, I feel like it was the right call 2 years ago to kind of say, we want to reset the design language because we can have a roadmap. We're not telling you yet. And so we're giving you a new design. We're giving developers gradually new technologies to build upon, like dynamic type, adaptive UIs, and then we come up with iPad multitasking. And that's exactly, as John Gruber once wrote, that's how Apple rolls. They do this kind of stuff behind the scenes, and then one day you say, oh, iPad has multitasking, but it's not one day. It's like the past 2 years, they have spent building up to this. And so that's why today in the article I wrote, this wouldn't have been possible before, because it's not just, let me flip a switch and have, 2 windows on the screen. It's not like that. It's people building technologies and features and a developer ecosystem adapting to those features at scale for 2 years. And now you can do this. It's different. And you got to pay attention.
So, Federico, I'm going to buy an iPad while I'm here. I'm being serious. I'm going to buy an Air 2.
Really?
Yeah.
I'm happy for you. We can split you together.
That's all I've ever really wanted. Because I've been lusting after a MacBook, right? Like something small and light and really portable to travel with. And I saw what they were doing on stage with the text selection stuff and all this split view stuff. And I can see how this could really fit into my work life for being productive, and I'm interested in trying it out. And so I'm gonna, before I leave here, I'm gonna get the Air 2. I'm gonna put the beta on it and play around. I'm excited to try it. It could be the start of something very beautiful.
I'm happy for your iPad, Mike.
Now, in the interest of time, I want to cut the watch. We'll talk about that maybe next week, because we need to talk about music. Right. Okay. So can I just say up front what I think, and then you will criticize me for the next 15 minutes? You can do that just after I thank Igloo for sponsoring this week's episode. Igloo is the intranet that you will actually like. With Igloo, you don't have to be chained to your desk to do your best work. You can manage your task list from your laptop during a meeting. You can share status updates with your colleagues who can be wherever they want to be as well when you're walking out the door on Friday, and you're able to access the latest version of any file from home. You can even do this in your pajamas if you want. You can do it in a hotel room in San Francisco. It doesn't matter. With Igloo, everything is mobile, just like you. If you've ever looked at your intranet and it hurt your eyes because it just looks so terrible, like it's been just transported from the 1990s to your computer, and you thought, I hate this, I just don't want to have to deal with this, well, Igloo can make that happen. All of Igloo's stuff looks amazing. It's all super configurable, so you can completely rebrand it, give it the look and feel that you want of your team. You can customize certain areas so it fits with different departments in your company. It's super easy to get Igloo to fit with the way that you work. You don't have to try and fit your work to the way that it wants to be. With our mobile lives these days as well, people are always bringing in apps from outside. They're putting documents in Dropbox, they're putting documents in Box, they're taking them outside of the company. Everything's getting lost. It's all out of sync. There's all security problems everywhere. You don't want to have to deal with that, and Igloo makes sure that you don't have to, because they integrate with all of these services and allows you to store your documents in one big, easy to secure, easy to manage platform. If you know terms like 256-bit encryption, single sign-on, and Active Directory integrations, then you'll know just how safe and secure Igloo is. It's time to break away from an intranet that you hate. Go and sign up for Igloo right now, and you can try it for free for any team of up to 10 people for as long as you want. Sign up right now at igloosoftware.com/connected. Thank you so much to Igloo for supporting this show and all of Relay FM. Federico, I know you have an open statement, but I have one first. I'm jumping in right now, okay? Because I feel like I know how you're going to feel about this. So I want to make something very clear about how I feel about Apple Music up front. This is the service that I want It's got the best of Beats. It looks like it's got the best of Spotify. If all of the music is there that I'm going to want, which I expect it will be, this is the service that I've been looking for. It's going to be native on the platform. It's going to work great. I'm really excited about Beats One. I'm looking forward to hearing like a radio station made in 2015 and what that sounds like. Human curation is exactly what I want. Having everything there and just paying a good fee, like it's probably like $9.99 a month in the UK as well. I'm really happy with that. I think the problem that Apple faced, and this is definitely something that people here have been talking about a lot, it seems to be a consensus feeling, is that the presentation was lacking. It seemed to be quite mismatched with the rest of it. The pacing was very different. They were bringing in people who didn't seem to be extremely well prepared onto stage to give their presentations. The demos weren't as tight. They didn't show the features that they wanted to do. The service itself looks amazing, but I feel, and I know a bunch of people that I've spoken to as well feel, that Apple really just didn't do a very good job of selling it. And this is probably because, that people are saying that Apple TV was meant to be there and stuff like that. I think that this might have been thrown together a little bit too last minute for them, and they weren't able to deal with it properly. That is my opening statement. I'm very excited about Apple Music, but I think the keynote presentation was lacking. Federica.
My general thought is that people need to chill more. And what I really don't understand is, why would your judgment of a new service, whether it's from Apple or Google, anyone, be influenced by the presentation?
Because that's how they're showing it to you. That's the point of the presentation, is to influence.
But why
you
would
into
you
wanting
say
it.
this service is gonna fail based on the presentation?
Who has said
Who's
that?
saying that?
Mashable.
Okay.
There's an article that I can give you the names. Mashable as an article saying that Apple Music has already failed and won't beat Spotify. Ben Thompson is saying that Apple has lost focus with the Apple Music presentation and app, and Dr. Drang is saying that the presentation was so bad that it's a sign, of Apple being sloppy and that kind of stuff.
So I think so. And I have not read. I've read Dr. Drang's. I've not read the other two. I think the dividing line, and I wrote about this too. Everyone did. Is that you have an opportunity to announce a product, and I think that they didn't do a great job at that. Now I called out in my article that does not mean. You cannot tie like a bad presentation to a bad product. Like I think the product is probably fine.
Is it bad because of the dancing? Because of the songs?
No, I think fundamentally, I think Apple failed to explain in a concise way what Apple Music is.
No, I disagree.
Have you watched it? Like,
it's twice.
Twice. They start to go down the road of like they say, there's this Beats One radio thing. There is streaming. They don't really get into what's available to stream and what that looks like.
Yes,
and then they talked about Connect. So there are the three things there, but you have to watch it and take notes to understand it. It was not.
No, not really.
Think about all of the best Apple keynotes. We've covered many of them on our show.
Yeah,
you can walk away and you can remember what they talked about clearly. And I think that Apple just muddied the waters by too many demos and having people on stage who just. I'm gonna
say Drake. I didn't understand what he said, but I do understand why you. I kind of understood what he was saying, but he's a celebrity, he's a rapper, he's not a tech presenter, and I will say Jimmy is not a good presentation guy. It's his first Apple keynote, I think, so it was kind of loud. He didn't get the joke. He didn't get why people were laughing at the three things. He kind of looked at the slide. That was kind of awkward. And I would say, the presentation could have been, better, or maybe there could have been fewer songs. But from this to say this was a mess, that's a...
I think you and I are saying basically the same thing. I do not think that a bad presentation means the product is a mess. I think the product is fine, but I think they failed at the objective of making a good case for that. And yeah, I agree. Like the most memorable thing about Drake's experience on stage was his cool Apple jacket, which I really want someone to buy for me. But
But I disagree on being confused by what Apple Music is after the first time I watched the keynote. I had a pretty good idea.
You might understand it, right? You might have got it. I didn't.
I'm not special.
But I didn't get
you're
it.
very special.
Like, you are very special. But, like, the thing is, like, you may have not been confused, and that's fine. But I was confused. Like, what happens with... Because I didn't know until I went and looked on the website. Like, is it like iTunes Match in that I can upload my music? Like, how does that part work? And like, what I didn't understand how like some of the radio stations that they're showing working, because they're talking about human curation, but then and they have Beats One, but then there's these other ones, and it's like it was like there was a lot of stuff there, and I think fundamentally, if like the Drake piece was taken out and Eddie Q was there to drive the whole thing, it would have been a lot better, because I think a lot of people, and I put myself included, I was getting a little bit like deluded about what was going on because of some of the stranger parts of the presentation. So I think I criticized Eddie Q harder than I normally would because I was in a bad frame of mind when I was watching it. I think that is the key part.
Let me go through 2 points. Okay. The first point is that those 2 things you mentioned, how the upload stuff works, how the radio stations work, that's the details. And you always end up reading on the K-base for that stuff, because even when they announced iTunes Match, they didn't give you the details for the icons, what they mean. You needed to go read on the documentation. That's
really different from understanding how many songs are on their streaming service. The only metric anyone cares about a streaming service, they couldn't answer. That seems problematic to me.
That's the only point that I would say it needs to be clear. But people are saying, yeah, they didn't say how uploading songs work. They didn't say this. They didn't say that. And it seems to me, at least, that a lot of people are obsessing over details that eventually Apple will give in the documentation, because it's always been this way, and because they can't give every single detail on stage, because that would be exactly what people don't want, a presentation that is too long and filled with details. So I feel like it's always been this way, and presentations have always gone bad. Even with Steve Jobs, there were awkward moments. And yes, Steve Jobs was a much better seller and presentation guru on stage. But this stuff happens, to have the rambling guest who just goes on and you don't know what he's saying. We had the stuff even with the iPhone introduction. We had the stuff even with the iPad introduction.
Yeah, do you remember how bad the AT&T CEO was?
Yes, exactly.
He had index cards.
It's not new. This is what I'm not following. It's not new. It always happens. But why do you need to have a guest? Because you need to show that you have support from people who other normal people know. People know Drake. And to say, yeah, Drake was at the Apple event, that matters for people.
No, I don't mind that Drake was there, but he didn't do the job that he was brought on to do, because they were like, oh, we want to talk about Connect, here's Drake. And then he came out and told his story. I think he just didn't really know why he was there, and he just told a story, which is an interesting story, but I don't think it was the intention of bringing him on. Would you disagree with that? Like, I think he didn't do a good job of being there, but I like that he was there.
I think that's always the case with Apple guests, I think.
They're just not as polished, are they?
Yeah, but that's always this way. It always happens. Whether it's from game developers, singers, bands. Do you remember the Bono thing with U2 last year and Finger Touch? That was possibly more awkward than Drake.
I think you're making a good point that awkward parts of the presentations are not new. I think that is making. Yeah. I think you are.
But
making
then there's
point there.
The people who are saying that Eddie Q, the dancing, the songs, and that part I really, really don't get, because it seems to me like it was really having fun. And yes, he's kind of sloppy, and we make fun of the t-shirt, the shirts that he wears, but it's Eddie Q. He was having fun with songs, and it's music, Yeah. And I think it's
tainted. I think that the opinion that a lot of people have is like, it was long, and I know that so a lot of people we were watching it in a room with a bunch of other people, right? Mm-hmm. And everybody starts to get a bit restless, And I think that is what's happening here. Like, people have seen it, they were getting restless, like people wanted to go to the bathroom. I did. It's like 2.5 hours or whatever, and Eddie Q's like, let's play another song. How about another song? So I think that was it. Like I'm getting restless, so it's tainting my opinion about.
Yeah,
what
but
was going on stage.
let's not make the bathroom affect your opinion.
But it did though, man. It was.
I understand why.
He was doubled over. It was all very, very strange.
I can understand.
So
but here's a serious point. So do you even realize, by the way, how ridiculous it is that we're talking about Drake and jackets and Eddie Q dancing? This is not the main point. Let's talk about what matters. Why did they introduce this service at a developers conference? And I feel like the timing, it's very clear to me. So it's launching at the end of June. There's going to be 3 months of free trial. When those 3 months are up, it's the end of September, which means people are going to buy new iPhones, and which means people are going to go to the Apple store, and they're going to also see headphones and that kind of stuff. And it feels to me like the timing of the introduction, the 3 months of free trial, it kind of lines up nicely with the September timeframe that Apple usually employs to launch new iPhone stuff. And I feel like that could be, like they could really use that to sell Apple Music in a new way, like bundling maybe Apple Music with a new iPhone. I don't know, but I feel like the timing is interesting. And maybe when people say they should have had a separate event, my impression is that they needed to have Apple Music launch now, to have something ready when those 3 months are up.
Yeah, that's good. I hadn't thought of that at the time. Because 3 months is weird, right? Well, not a month. Or like that 3 months takes you to that point, which I think is probably a good point.
Yeah, and I think too, the iPhone, while it's a very important part of Apple's business, they have been pairing other things with it, during keynotes, right? Like the September event, the iPhone was done in like 12 minutes, and then it was all, Apple Pay and Apple Watch stuff. And so if they also have the watch to contend with in the fall, in that September timeframe, like it does kind of make sense to tell a cohesive story there. And I absolutely love the video they showed of the sort of the history of listening to music. So they had people with record players. Casey Liss was in there, and then they had 8 tracks with Dr. Dre and tape players and CD players and iPods, and there was like an iMac G4, which made me happy. I really liked that video, and when you go back and look at when Apple introduced iTunes, that was sort of the introduction of like the thought that Apple as an entity loves music, and Apple as a group of individuals loves music. And they were clearly are continuing to beat that drum today of, we're doing this because this is an area of not only technology, but an area of life that we care about. And maybe that's why Eddie Q got carried away playing a bunch of songs. But I think you're right that the 90 days does get them into the fall. But I think too, I think that's enough time where like if you use something for 90 days, like you're going to pay for it, right? Like that's well beyond the line of something becoming a habit, especially in media consumption.
You know what's nice, that it's the summer and people, I at least based on my Italian perspective, people go out more, people go on vacation, they listen to music more, they have parties, they can, they listen to music, they share music more in the summer, and I feel like it's good timing to be able to use this new music app for free in the summer, and then eventually you'll be so hooked to the service that when September comes, you'll be like, yeah, of course I want to pay. That seems to me like it's nice timing, and this is why Apple, they could have said, we don't introduce Apple Music at WWDC, or we do introduce Apple Music and we'll upset some people, and we will have this presentation that is not as polished as the other stuff, but whatever, because at the end of the day, hopefully people will look at the service, not the presentation. And that what really gets under my skin is the having an opinion based on Eddie Q dancing and Drake. That stuff is important because we tech people, we obsess over the fine art of Apple keynotes because they have their own history and facts and trivia, and that's important. But we should not lose the perspective of the actual product. One last point that I wanted to kind of talk with you guys: Beats One and the international rollout of Apple Music with Beats One as the radio.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like having a global channel live 24/7 shared with people in over 100 countries, I find that message a very positive message to say we want to give people from every corner of the world to listen to the same stuff, if they want to listen to the same stuff live also. And I find that idea very powerful, to have a kid in Australia and a guy in Italy and, a family in China listen to the same stuff. That to me, it's very romantic as an image, but it's also very powerful as a message for a digital product.
I'm very surprised about the amount of countries that are going to be available to get this on day one. Because we were worrying that it wouldn't even see outside of the US this year, 100 countries is a very lofty goal. And I'm very interested in Beats One. We spoke about Zane Lowe on the show when Apple hired him from Radio 1. And, I spoke about how he's very influential, and I see him as somebody whose tastes music that I like. And to have a radio station, a radio station seems so peculiar today with the way that we listen to music. People choose their music and they choose what they like and they stream, and so the curated playlist makes sense, right? Because you're having some hand in that. But Beats One, you will tune in and whatever they are playing, that's what you're going to hear.
Right. I think that adds to sort of the romantic idea of it.
Yeah, it does.
Right.
That's old school.
Yeah, because there's a lot to be said for the world that we live in, where we can watch the news we want to watch, and we can follow the people on Twitter that we want to follow, and we can listen to the music we want to listen to. And not only does that limit what we can discover, but it can, especially to get into more serious things in music, right? Like if all I do is watch news that aligns with my political views, then I'm not seeing the world only through my lens. And so from an exploration standpoint, it's great. But there is something about it. I totally agree with you guys that goes back to a time where all that junk didn't exist, and you played what the guy played. You listened to what the guy played, and I think it's great. I do think that worldwide radio station, like, that feels it makes the world feel small, and it's sort of but really big at the same time, knowing that I could be listening to something. That's
a great way to put it.
That someone in God knows where is listening to as well, and we're both tapping our foot to it. Like, that sort of gives me goosebumps in a way that technology normally doesn't do. And so I think that's like the primary thing Apple's getting to. Like, we love music. We love it so much we're going to build a giant radio station that everyone can listen to. I think that's really, really exciting.
Oh my God, Federico, I think we might have pulled him away from the iPod Classic.
Yeah, I mean, are you seeing? Are you listening to the same Steven that I'm listening to?
I know.
It's like it's not the same guy anymore.
Oh, don't worry. They'll play lots of music I don't like. So
yeah, but the last point, we've been saying for years that Apple is now a camera company because they make the most popular camera in the world.
Yeah.
And with Beats One and Apple Music, they've been a music company before, but I feel like their plans are much bigger, and I think in a few years we'll say Apple is an audio company, and that's just crazy.
Yeah. I see where you're going with that, right? If you think when me and you, Federico, started getting into Apple were the music company, right?
Yeah.
They were the iPod, they were the music company. But today, mindshare is with Spotify.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Irrespective of what the numbers are, people think, people today, they think music, they think Spotify, right? There is a very, very strong chance that this time next year, it's back to Apple again.
No. I think so. I think those guys, I think Spotify will fare the best out of them. I think RDO is done. Yep. Yeah, and I think you're right. And I think it's sort of that two-prong approach of having the radio and having the streaming and having your local stuff. And, hey, I can go to this and I can see, my favorite band posting pictures from the road, via the Connect tab. And what they've done is they haven't created an app or a service. They've created an experience. And that's really what Apple is. At the heart of it, Apple is an experience company. And what they've done is taken playing music, which is something they know very well, right? Like for years, they've been that music company, but even then it was I'm buying or downloading music and I'm listening to it. There's not a lot of connection. It's a very one-way relationship, and people want more than that now. And so what they're giving people multiple channels to interact with their music and the artists that they love. And I think it's going to be hugely successful. I totally agree, Mike. I think in a year we sit down to revisit this. Was the first year of Apple Music look like? I think there'll be a lot of thumbs up emoji flying around.
And
I can't wait.
Interesting to see that Spotify is bragging about machine learning and that algorithms that they use. Very advanced, very fascinating.
Did you see
Apple?
Did you see Ardio's comment?
Yeah,
so
the
Ardio was
message.
like, welcome Apple, seriously, which is them mimicking Apple's letter to IBM when IBM launched the original PC. I don't know if you guys were aware of that. So,
I was aware this time, Steven. Don't worry.
Yes. Got a old computer reference to one of you guys. But yeah, there is always an inherent danger when your app, when the competition for your app is first party, right? Like music is going to be built in the dock on every iPhone shipped. Like that's really hard to overcome if you're Spotify or Rdio or somebody else. And you look at, let's look at podcast clients. There's a built-in Apple one. A lot of people use that. I know from our metrics, a lot of people use that app. I know a lot of people use third-party apps as well. But I feel like in music especially, I think there'll be people who are like, oh, this is great. This is from Apple. Like, I did iTunes and iPods in college, and people may not look at iTunes fondly, but I think everybody remembers their iPod carrying days fondly. I mean, I remember, that romantic idea about Beats One. I have that about carrying an iPod around in college, listening to music in between classes, having my entire library in my bag. And I think people will connect with that, and I think that those third-party guys are in for a fight.
Yeah.
I can't wait. I'm really excited for it, man. I'm looking forward to next month. I'm going to get Apple Music and Apple Pay. Like, it's all coming up, Mike, in July, let me tell you.
Yeah.
All right. Go on, Federico.
No, I just wanted to conclude that, Spotify does machine learning. I remember a few months ago, there was this blog post from a Spotify engineer about the system they created to kind of have a computer, like robots, listen to music for them and to basically use a neural network, a deep learning network to understand what music is like. Apple, we hired a bunch of people and we're going to do a radio program. I just find it fascinating to have these two different perspectives. I don't know. It's going to be an interesting year for Apple because they're doing new things. And new things in this, in this kind of world that changes quickly, but that also has very long-standing ideas and preconceptions. New things are exciting, and I think the recurring theme of WWDC this year is Apple is improving existing stuff, and that's good, but they're also trying new things, and they are expanding beyond technology. That's even more clear this year, and that to me is exciting. We will check back, I guess, next year, and we'll see how it goes, especially for Apple Music.
Yeah, so I know it's available for Mike and I. Is it available in Italy on day one?
Apple Music?
Yeah.
I think so. I want to hope that we're in the list of 100 countries. I saw the Italian webpage.
Right.
Well, let's not talk about Italy. But yeah, I saw the Italian webpage a few days ago, so I would say yes, we are. And there's an Italian Apple Music account on Twitter. I think so. I would. There's a 60% chance we're gonna be in. Yes, there's Apple Music in Italy. I'm
Great.
Looking at the website.
Real time follow-up.
It says tutti insieme, which means all together. Really nice. We're all together. We're holding our hands, waiting for Apple Music. in Italy.
Seems like a good place to stop.
Yeah. On that note, I want to thank our sponsors this week for helping us out. Our good friends over at the Omni Group of OmniFocus, Field Notes, and Igloo. If you want to find us online, you can catch our show notes today over at relay.fm/connected/43. If you want to find all of Federico's fantastic coverage, you can go to macstories.net. He's working like a champ over there, and you can find him on Twitter. He is at Viticci, Viticci. Federico, thank you for bringing so much work and knowledge to today's show. I really appreciate it.
Of course.
And if you want to find Mr. Stephen Hackett, I mean, he's writing about jackets or something over at 512pixels.net, and he is at ISMH on Twitter, and I am iMike, IMYKE. There's a bunch of stuff that we've been doing this week for coverage for WWDC. If you go to relay.fm, you'll find a bunch of shows there. Rocket Clockwise, Upgrade as well, as this lovely show Connected that I'm sure that you have enjoyed very much as we have enjoyed recording it. And we'll be back next week, and I think we'll all be back to normal again.
I hope so.
Until then, say goodbye, guys.
Arrivederci.
Adios.
We did it.